Welcome to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blaine. I interview leaders, experts and business professionals from around the world who are bringing leadership principles and know-how into the digitally driven 21st century workplace, with focus firmly on the how-to rather than the what. Each episode is in aid of a charity chosen by my guests, and since 2020, we've made donations to over 80 global and local causes. My guest for today's Rethink Leadership podcast is Elika Tasker, an extraordinary expert. She's an Energy Optimisation Coach, Health Concierge, professional speaker and restaurateur based in Singapore. How does she manage all this? The secret is tapping into our different human and environmental energies to shine bright. Elika works with the top 10% of leaders in helping them reconnect with their surface level and deeper energies to be more ready in tackling what life throws at them in business, in life, and as they grow themselves. Featured in prominent publications like the Straits Times, Mothership and Channel News Asia, Elika has delivered impactful workshops and masterclasses on energy management, human design and feminine flow. She also leads the Health Concierge Program, a personalised coaching and lifestyle support designed for purpose-driven leaders. We're proud to make this episode in aid of Dementia Singapore, the country's leading social service agency in specialised dementia care, caregiver support, training, consultancy and advocacy. Elika, thank you so much for joining me. Please introduce yourself, your expertise and your passion as a purpose-driven leader.
Oh, thank you, Jeremy, for having me. So I work with business leaders, entrepreneurs, companies that want to prioritize energy as something that's very valuable for optimal well-being and harmony in their life. So what makes me super passionate is the impact that it has when you give somebody an insight and that changes fundamentally how they view the world.
Can you define, so before we get into this, can you define what you mean by energy?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked me that, because for so many people that I start working with, they've only known energy as a very abstract thing. And I have to really ground energy into what it really is. So let's just talk about it on a scientific level, which is a lot of where I look at it from. Every single thing that you can imagine that we have, whether it's the seat that you're sat on, whether it's the voice that you hear of me, everything at the base level is made up of an atom. And those atoms vibrate. And when they vibrate, they emit frequencies. Those frequencies are measurable. And so at any point, I can measure someone's energy. We can measure anything. Most people are just kind of thinking about the obvious things we can measure, like the heart on the brainwave activity, but we can measure everything by energy. So that's what it is. And then, of course, there is more what people know day to day, like the sense of how someone makes you feel, like whether you're exhausted or whether you're in overflow, right? And then there's things like, currencies, money, which is, an exchange of energy. There is, I do this for you, you do this for me, and we exchange energy, so there's all of those different elements of energy.
That's a nice description, actually, for what that is. That really sort of cemented it for me.
Yeah.
And there are lots of things challenging all of us, and especially leaders out there at the moment, and probably challenging our energies. So I know you do a lot of research in this. So from that and working with purpose-driven leaders everywhere, what are the biggest challenges you're seeing for leaders? What are they facing? And what's the cost of not tackling them in energy terms and others?
Yeah. Well, luckily for me, since everything at the base level is down to energy, there isn't a problem or a challenge that a leader that's working with me is facing that I couldn't explain to them energetically what they need to shift. So one of the biggest ones that I see today is that from an evolutionary perspective, we are literally not designed for what we're trying to do. Regardless of gender, race, culture, anything like that. We are trying to evolve at the pace of technology. Now, at the moment, I'm obsessed with AI because it's basically just helping my work to be so much easy from an extension of Elika in coaching. But what I know is that we are consuming so much content, so much data, so much information, but we're not machines. And so what we are trying to do is get a physical human body to keep up at the speed of something that, this year, the intellect of AI will overtake human beings. So we will no longer be the superior mammal. And yet we're trying to keep up with this. Now, when we look at DNA and the expression of DNA and how fast it evolves, it's not that fast. So what does that mean? That means that the load on us physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually is draining us. And most people have not been equipped with the tools of how to manage that.
So what's the cost of that? So if that let's keep tracking that on and we're not necessarily doing something about it.
Yeah.
What happens to us and our energy?
Yeah. So the cost of that is, as a broad, big picture, we constantly feel depleted. So what that looks like is we don't feel like we're in the right size body or the right body. So we have in our minds this kind of idea of what our life will be like and the things that we want to achieve. And our physical body cannot keep up with that. So that can mean that we're carrying excessive weight. For some, it can mean that they can't keep on the weight. For some, it can be injuries that happen, there's strains in their body, neck ache, shoulder ache, back pain, hip ache, you sit hours and hours, you treat yourself like a machine. So for some, it's in the physical body. For others, it's more in the emotional body. So it's really about how they feel about certain things. So, for example, their self-worth, whether they are not good enough, they're not being able to achieve what's on them, so they feel frustrated, whether they feel disappointed or just sheer sadness in where they're at. For example, sadness about the idea that you can't be present for your children because when you come back from work, you're so exhausted that the last thing you want to do is play or even just have a conversation with your intimate partner. For some, it's in the mental body where they cannot switch off because of the amount of data, information, things that's coming through, energetic inputs. The insomnia is happening as a result of that. The anxiety, where your mind is constantly in the future of the things that might literally happen to you, or depression, where your mind is actually in the past of all these experiences that you've had, or cognitive function, where that sharpness that you used to have, like you can't even remember the name of that person that you met yesterday, never mind where you put the keys. And then for some, it's what we see in the exchange we're having with others and how it's just not as good as we would like.
Yeah, it's so beautifully explained as well. And I've written down here what we're fighting at. Evolution is fighting revolution in many ways. Yeah.
Can I steal that one?
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, but it's true. We talk about speed being competitive currency of the day and being driven by those technological advances, digital. But you're right. We're just constantly chasing our tails around that. And I recognize some of those physical and emotional pieces that you talk about. Even though I made a big change at the end of 2018 because I was losing myself in the way that you describe, and I'm an energetic person in the way I mean energy, and I'm positive with that, but I was losing that, and it takes so long to be aware of that too. And before I go further into that, just to pick up then, so those people who are experiencing some of those things, what is the point where they become almost like aware, or where they get an awareness that they need to do something to stop or to change?
Yeah, usually, I mean, it's just like me. Unfortunately, I'm not one of those people that learn the first time. So I had not one, but two burnouts. So usually it's you're very close to the goal or you've achieved the goal and it doesn't feel like how you thought it would feel. So if I think about myself when I came to Singapore 14 years ago and I was chasing the career and the progression and all the opportunities, and then when I started looking at my management team and looking at them and what was the next step for me to be in that position, and I could experience what it was doing to my physical body, how it was impacting my relationships, my general well-being. And I looked at that and I thought, that's not what I want if it means this. So it's being very close to the goal or at the goal and it just not feeling good.
Yeah, yes, I get that. And in fact, I'd not thought of it that way, but that fulfillment is lost in what used to kind of get to you or give you that give you that pep. I'm interested just one other point as well, because there's a lot around how this pace plus technology in our hands is impacting the younger generation growing up. They go for the, these 10-second dopamine hits of scroll, 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 not talking to other people, almost closing down. Where do you see those energies shifting?
Yeah. I mean, what we can see with how what it's like when you've grown up with technology all of the time is that some of the fundamentals that make us human are not happening. And so, look at the suicide rates, the depression of children today. It is just insane. Look at the food. In the US, they're reporting that 60% of the food consumed is processed food, which is basically not food, but a food product. And so if that makes up the cellular structure of your body, you are what you eat, then you're literally not, you can be made up of plastic in the case of the US. So what does that mean? It means that we're becoming less and less human. And if you become less and less human, then that means that your body starts to experience things that, dis-ease in the body, ailments in the body, and all of these things that we're seeing from ADHD, ADD, dementia, Alzheimer's, cancer. All of these things are now the norm. I say to my clients, because I focus on coaching the top 10%. For some of them that feel that that's where they want to be, it's very intimidating, that. And I say to them, not now. 90% of the population have 3 or more health ailments. So what that means is if I make you physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually strong, which is completely capable for me in 3 months, that actually puts you in the top 10%. I categorize myself in the top 5%. And so what has happened? Actually, a lot of that is actually just by being human. So I look at the children and the new generation just coming through, and I think if they have the right parent that's been through and done a lot of the inner work on themselves, not just the physical work, then they can be set up and be prepared. But if they haven't, and that person's on the roller coaster of life, just going through aimlessly, just consuming and being told what to do and just following, wow, I cannot even explain. And we know, let's be honest, that as mammals, we have survived ahead of all of the mammals because of survival of the fittest. But right now, we literally are in a race for the survival of the fittest.
Yeah, it's keep going back to something you said before. Yeah, we're becoming, or many are becoming, plastic people, sort of imitations of what we should be, really, in many ways. So let's flip this over now and think, right,
Yeah.
what can we do? And let's get back into business. And one thing that has certainly shifted over the last 5 years is that we've been focusing a lot on employees, on well-being in the organizations, but we've not really looked up the line to leaders who are dealing with so many transformational moving parts now that their energy is in danger of being sapped. And I'm talking about capable leaders here as well.
Yeah.
So the $64,000 question, Elika, is how do we help to rebalance those leaders in work and, of course, for themselves outside it, as you talked about, so that they feel renewed, re-energized, able to tackle all of those things on their agendas in business, and of course, when they come back, like you were talking before, to play with the kids or go and do something fun.
Yeah. Well, look, listen, the answer to that, let me give you the background to what's happening so that you can see what they need to do. So if we just imagine something that's difficult for so many of us, that we were also mammals living on the land. We weren't living in concrete buildings like we are now. We were all on the land. We were all working on the land, feeding on the land. That's how we were designed. Every part of our body, genetically, our brain, our organs, everything, our muscles were for that. And so what happened is men came off the land first and they built buildings, factories, right? And we went through this industrialization period. And at that point, women were still looking at the land, at least taking the food from the land and preparing it. But they joined the workplace next. So that's why I like to say for women, the men will build their workplace for them. No wonder you're struggling. But so then we go into post-industrialization. And what we think that happened there is that we can see that as a leader, what made you successful was your wisdom. If I knew a lot, had a lot of information in my head, was more so-called intelligent, right? Intellect, then I could manage you as a factory worker. I could take over you. I was the more powerful one. So that hierarchy became. And so what we then did is we put a lot of weighting on intelligence, on mental intelligence, on IQ. And so that became the hierarchy. People wanted more and more qualifications. Certain people already got that tick for the qualification, lawyers, doctors, dentists, they all got that. And everybody else was like, well, I need to do more. So we put them through the education system constantly. And then you see a break away from that. And the break away from that is you start to see, hang on a minute, Richard Branson did pretty well. Elon Musk is doing pretty well. And we start to see all these role models that appear that didn't seem to work in that system. These kind of black sheep that went against it and then still managed to find their version of success. And then we start looking at them and going, what do they have that we don't have, or we have that we're not using? And this is where we understand what I think, to answer your question, what we need today. We need to understand that what got us here is not what's going to get us there. So the IQ and our intelligence is 33.3% of the intelligence of the human brain. And where is the other intelligence coming from? Well, I like to train all of the leaders around the head, the heart, and the gut. Okay, so this is the work of the Heart Maths Institute that are bringing out some amazing research that talk about heart coherence. But the brain is something that I say to my leaders that you need, but it's an encyclopedia. So go flick in the pages and find out the wisdom that you got from all of the experience that brought you here. But that's all it is. It's an encyclopedia. Your heart, at every moment, being the largest magnetic instrument in your body. What is a magnet? Brings things towards you, makes it so much easier when things are coming to you rather than you having to go get it, right? So your heart, when you actually tune into how do you feel about something? Do you feel sad? Do you feel excited? Do you feel frustrated? Do you feel anger? These are all signals from your body, or as I call emotions, energy in motion, energy moving through you. So the heart has such a wisdom. And then the gut, that's our primal brain. That's that one where you go, oh, I sense something off. That gut instinct, those butterflies in your stomach when you're going to stand on stage in front of thousands of people that resembles when you were going to get speared. That's that primal brain. So leaders today that can only use their minds, their intellect, their strategies, their textbook theories, these leaders did very, very well in passing examinations. We need more than that. We need heart-to-heart connection, and we need instincts that intuitively make you be able to make a decision in the moment based on what is around you and not what's in the textbook.
Yeah, I like that. With my simple brain, I've noted that journey down as the journey from IQ to MEQ, and that MEQ
I love that.
is that combination of IQ, emotion, the gut, and the other part of the heart as well, the attractiveness, if you like, that goes with it, and that energy. that really speaks to me, and I understand that from a personal journey perspective as much as anything else. So thinking about that, so for those tuning in who are feeling right, I kind of get that movement. What are the benefits of getting it right for those that buy into this, for others that they work with, and for their organizations? And any examples you got would be great.
Yeah. So the biggest is that you use less energy because you're using your energy efficiently. Things happen to you with more ease and flow. There is much more harmony. So what does that look like? Physically, if you're having to be that person that has to run around over town and do all these meetings back to back and race around, because if you're not physically there with people, things don't happen, then actually, when you are way more in tune with yourself and have a bigger impact on people, you physically don't need to do as much. It's really interesting, right? And then when we look at how we make people feel, so when we are in tune with ourselves, how can you be empathetic with someone if you can't even feel your own emotions? If you're numb and you can't express how you feel about situations, there is no way you can show empathy to your colleague, to your manager, to your client, to your customer, to your family. You can't. You need to be able, you can only go to the depth of somebody else as what you can go within yourself. So, of course, your relationships are going to be much more powerful. More powerful relationships mean better business, more ease in business, because people do not buy from companies. They buy from individuals. They buy from the person you can have a beer with, or in my case, a good glass of wine. So this is a big thing. And then mentally, like we've all experienced it as a leader when we've made a decision and we can't sleep at night because we know we may have followed the textbook, but we don't like what we did. We don't like how it made us feel. And so it's ruminating over your mind as you put your conscious brain to sleep. Your subconscious brain goes, hello, now it's time for me to tell you I'm not happy with that. So this is it. And then, there's also as a leader, we know when we look at people and they give us that face, when we exchange energy, when we just walk away or we walk away and we skip because we're like, oh my God, I can tell that, they feel good about us. They feel good about the dealings. They feel good about the plans. And so we want to feel that exchange of energy. So these are all the benefits that we get to have that basically create harmony personally and professionally because we're using energy as our most valuable currency.
We don't need to name names here, but what of those, because you work with the top leaders.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
yeah.
For those that you've worked with, what are the differences that you've seen as an example in some of these leaders that have fully embraced this journey with you and have now found themselves again?
Yeah, I mean, and it's just so beautiful because I have all spectrum of clients, all industries, all races, all cultures. And it's amazing because one of the biggest pieces of my work is to actually rewire their brain, to upgrade their software is what I always say, because their software has glitches. And so when they come with their limited beliefs, I'm like, well, that's really interesting because X, Y, and Z in this industry seems to manage fine with it. So the current one is, the Singapore market, like that's the current one at the moment. And I'm like, okay, we're all here for opportunities. So what I've seen is that regardless of the industry, and if I think about, let's just talk about some of the last few clients that I've worked with. So, I've worked with an ambassador. So if I think about the role of being the representative of her country in a completely another country with the pressures of the eyes and the energy and all the taking that can happen. I've worked with someone that has run a business for over 20 years in advertising and is an absolute pillar in her industry, seen it, but at what expense? I've worked with a mom returning back to work that had lack of confidence, but was in a VP position previously. And so was that. I've worked with someone that went from being the main manager in a business to being able to buy the business and wanting to have the confidence and clarity. So what is the thread that binds? Is that your question? What's the thread that binds them together? Is that the question? What's the thread that binds them together?
The benefits that they're realizing from it.
Yeah. So the benefits that they realize is very clear. Confidence and clarity. If you know who you are, what you're here to do, and how you're here to do it, you are going to use your energy so more efficient. You're going to immediately go, hang on a minute, that's an energy drainer for me. And that is an energy giver. I'll go to that person. I'll do this thing. I'll do that. And they come in so many different shapes and sizes, energy drainers and givers, right? But having the confidence and the clarity on what that is, you can't pay for this.
Yeah, and some people who wish to be all things to all people, just by their very nature, the risk is that they just dive in and then suddenly they've got all of these different things that they're dealing with which aren't fulfilling for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I will be honest, I use an amazing tool. I have so many tools. I'm very fortunate that people seek me in the market and see what I do and go, okay, that's different, but I've got the tool that helps you. And one of them was, a really amazing piece of quantum physics. It was a machine that actually can measure the frequency. And I'm like, oh my gosh, God literally has created this machine for my business. Thank you. Because, I deal with a lot of left brainers, so they need the data. So being able to scan them and go, and they're like, how the hell do you know that? I'm like, energy doesn't lie. It's measurable by frequencies, to a real beautiful tool that I have called Human Design, which was, I started my career in HR and did my business graduate with CIPD, and we used to use Myers-Briggs and disc profiling and all of these ways of assessing people and putting them into boxes. And it was good to an extent, but it was data of 50 years, maximum 100 years. Whereas I've used Human Design, which is a blend of science and ancient wisdom that uses so much history and thousands of years of how humans behave. And so with that, it's a tool that I can use to really go, okay, this is how you do your marketing. These are your superpowers. This is how you are designed by your energetic buildup. This is what literally at a cellular level you came here to do. This is the thing that you're here to speak about. It's just so beautiful to be able to give somebody that level of clarity as a guidebook of who they are.
And I'm curious, actually, is there a gender bias to this in terms of energy loss or energy gain or regain?
Yes, is the short. I think, sometimes on the gender thing, maybe because of what I do and because I look at people at such a deep, unique way through using their human design, sometimes I think we can go too extreme on the gender thing, to be honest. But what I will say is, from a biology perspective, yes, there is. For example, men have a minimum of 8 times more testosterone than women. So what that is that's your drive, that's your motivation, that's get things done hormone. Now, women also would run to a biological clock that's different. So the workplace was built by men for men because it was built for the 9 till 5 or the office hours or the factory hours. And so that runs to the sunrise, sunset, which is called circadian rhythm. But women work to the moon cycle, which is what the farmers use. It's what surfers will use to decide to go out. It's what vineyards use to plant their crops if they want to do biodynamic farming. And this is a 28-day cycle which governs our natural energy. So what you experience in 24 hours, we experience in 28 days. So what that means is the woman's chemistry of the brain can be 25% different in 28 days. So if you give me that very important meeting on the wrong week, my ability to communicate what I think is dampened. Whereas if you give me on the right week, I'm like, oh my gosh, my estrogen is high. Estrogen is the extrovert hormone. So I'm like, I can communicate things clearly. I know what to say. I know what he needs. I can feel it. And so these are differences that we have.
Great stuff. And I'm sure this will resonate for lots of those listening to this or watching it on YouTube.
Yeah.
So for those that say, right, I recognize myself in this, and I'm becoming now aware from what Elika has been talking about of what I need to do. So what is your advice for them to start that progress, take small steps to make progress?
Yeah. So my advice is always do the inner work. So we in wellness, in leadership, in, all of the mainstream support and information we get guided to work always on the physical body. Maybe if I diet more or exercise more, I'll feel good about myself. It's all about the physical body. And as I've alluded to before, there are 4 layers that I work through on the energy body: the physical, the emotional, the mental. And in science, in quantum physics, we call this the information field, the energy that surrounds us that we exchange with others. So most people are too busy working on the physical body. The inner body, exploring how we feel about certain situations. How do you make me feel whenever I turn up? Why do I always feel terrible when I'm around you? Whenever I eat this, why do I always feel like completely my energy is drained? Whenever I go to that place, why do I always notice that I feel physically exhausted? So paying attention to our inner world and making a note. I call this my energy audit. When a client starts with me, I do a full audit, a bit like an accountant, and I audit every single area of their life that takes energy away from them. And so it's so easy for me to start at the low-hanging fruit. But I advise people to start with an energy audit of their own life, which is piece of paper, 2 columns, energy givers, energy drainers, and start making notes of what they are.
Yeah, great. And I'm back in Singapore at the end of April, and I've
You
got
want
a
me to
big
audit your
asterisk
energy?
by I need a quantum whatever it was, a quantum
Oh,
analysis of my
yes.
whatever. So
Yeah.
so I'm
You,
definitely going to be in touch
yeah.
about that. And this focus, to go back to something that we were talking about before, that focus on that pure almost conditioning around IQ and the
Yeah.
intelligence quotient, let's call it by its full name, to the me Q, being more aware of the inner workings of me, the
Yes.
intelligence, yes, but also all of those other bits that come into it, right
Mm.
back to the primeval me as well, that gut as you were talking about.
Yeah.
I'm sure that many of those who are nodding along like I am furiously will want to find out more and
Yeah.
connect with you. How do they do
Yeah.
that, Elika?
Well, I'm now currently on all the social media platforms. So LinkedIn is the obvious one for my execs that are on there. I'm also on Instagram. Last year, we started my YouTube channel where I share tips, but I would really recommend that people go on any of those platforms or my website, which is just my name, elika.co, and sign up for my newsletter, because my newsletter is where I share my life through the lens of energy auditing and what I'm experiencing, what I'm doing, where I'm helping my clients. It can tell you about the masterclasses that I have where I teach about energy on all these different layers. And so you're really going to get what I think is most important, which is the lifestyle habits that are realistic and sustainable.
Such an insightful conversation, Elika. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blaine. Please like, comment and support us on your favourite platform and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch as well as listen to each episode.